Good morning, everybody. We'll be getting started in a moment. Hey, good morning, everybody. I think we've time to get started. So thank you for joining us this morning on our session where we're going to be talking from vision to action, key strategies for a successful digital project. So just some housekeeping rules to say the session is being recorded and will be available on demand later if you feel the need that you'd like to watch it again or share with any of your colleagues. You'll see that there's a Q&A box, and that's for any questions that you have throughout the session, and I know Sarah will be very happy to answer any of those. So please do put them in at any point throughout the session and we will answer as many of those as we can. There's also a chat box, and that's really for any more technical or support questions. So put those in there, and my lovely colleagues in the background will be keeping an eye on those. So I'm Joyce Harmon. I'm Head of Client Services at Hart Square, and I am absolutely delighted to be joined by Sarah this morning. Sarah, if you'd like to introduce yourself.
Morning, everyone. I'm Sarah Hathaway. I'm the Joint Chief Executive Officer for the Institute of Student Employers, and my side of the business is membership and operations, which is why I'm here.
Perfect, thank you, Sarah. And also just to point out, which we'll talk about this a bit more later. Sarah, I think you're saying 5 weeks out from your go live on your big digital project. So
Yes.
yes, so lots of experience. So take advantage of that, Sarah. Lots of questions, but really appreciating this because I know it's a really crunch time. So thank
No
you.
problem.
So just for those of you not aware of Hart Square, just to say we're a consultancy practice and we work within the not-for-profit space, and everything we do is really about helping organizations embark on those digital and change projects. So one of the things we want to kind of talk about today, there's lots of different elements around it about developing those digital projects as digital strategies, and one part of those is around the business case, the kind of the ask for investment and how that looks. So we do always like a stat, and so we looking at sort of some reports that have been run over the last kind of couple of years. It's interesting to show that there's from the Charity Digital Report that 70% of charities are increasing their digital investment, and this is looking at things like infrastructure or data management, expanding online fundraising capabilities, and that also interestingly in the membership sector, membership organisations, that also that there's a 56% increase in investment around digital projects, looking at things around virtual or hybrid events or CRM systems and digital communications. And this was from a report from the Institute of Fundraising in 2023. So I think it just really shows the importance and the level of investment in digital projects that is happening within the sector. And so therefore making it all the more important to make sure that there's a good strategy behind this investment, there's a good plan behind this investment. So thinking about a business case and kind of, what is the purpose? Now, to some people, this is a bit teaching to suck eggs, but really it's about, thinking right from the start, what is the best use of your budget? Why are you doing this project? Why are you embarking on this digital journey? So it's about making sure that this supports all of the decision making, having clear clarity on why you're doing this, how long is it going to take, how much is it going to cost, what resources that we need in place. So this is a kind of the solid foundation for the start of all of these digital projects to make sure that everybody's on the same page. Very often when we get into thinking about, developing your business case or your strategy document, lots of people use, different terms for what it is. There's a bit of a sort of a myth versus reality. So thinking about, breaking down into different areas, that business cases, your ask, it's just about the costs, it's only about the money. But it has to be about more than just the money, don't get me wrong. The financial side of things is very, very important. But a project has to show that it's about what is going to be the impact. Why are you doing this? What pain points is it going to fix? That you must do a really lengthy document. If it's not 100 pages minimum, nobody's going to take it seriously. And that's not true. It's about making sure that you have the key points covered. Conciseness can absolutely work. It's about presenting, in a digestible format, the whys, the ask, how this is going to benefit us as an organization. So don't spend months and months and months putting together a really long document that in essence nobody's going to read properly. That you should only, another myth is that you should only focus on the immediate and tangible benefits of whatever this digital project is going to be. And very often that is a big thing when projects go wrong, is that everybody thinks go live on whatever the project is, be it a CRM or a website or whatever it is. On day one, you're going to realize all the benefits immediately. Tangible benefits, absolutely really important and really, really relevant, but thinking about also the intangible benefits. So is it you're doing this because it's going to help with customer experience? Is this actually is going to help with employee satisfaction? That actually, if you're bringing in, say, for example, a CRM system, you can get rid of all those multiple secret spreadsheets that everybody has. So thinking about the intangible benefits as well, that it's not just all about big bang and what's going to happen immediately on day one. That the business case, the big myth is that it is only for big investment projects, so that you should only take the time to put together and document why you're doing this only if it's a really big spend, really big project. It's something that should be done really in an organization for every project, because you have to be able to kind of show the cost benefit. But equally, why are you doing it? So that you've got people bought in behind the project and why you're doing the project. So regardless of the size of the project, being very clear why you're doing it, and getting that documented right from the start. Thinking about digital transformation and thinking, well, if we're talking digital transformation, that just means technology. And there's the problem that if projects are just seen as they're all only about technology, about the systems, the tools, or the platform, that you're not going to get buy-in from people. So the reality is that digital transformation projects, they're about changing processes, they're about improving people's skills, they're about perhaps reshaping the organizational culture, enhancing customer experience or user experience. That they're much more than just the tech. The tech is there to support the strategic change. So not just focusing about the physical tech, because often then the message can get mixed and lost. And then finally, around kind of the myths and reality, that business case documents, your strategy documents, they are a static document to be written once and never kind of to be looked at again. They really need to be seen as a dynamic piece of work. So a good business case is looking at the longer term potential changes, builds in flexibility. You should be constantly reviewing when you're going through sort of that project and you're midway through, to kind of check in against that original document you put together, to go, are we on track for this? Does this make any sense? And then before I just move on to that, Sarah, I was just going to kind of bring you in here on this really quickly. I suppose for you, was there any area, kind of a sort of a myth or reality that resonated with you, or anything that you really saw as when you were thinking about putting the project together and sort of the ask for the spend?
Well, it definitely is a big investment for us. So it's not it's not the smaller piece, but I think it's that bit about not just thinking about the technology, and also, and we can come back to this a bit later, but my business case was not 100 pages. It wasn't 10 pages. It was, but I think that's about, being appropriate for your organization, and we're relatively small. So there may be expectations that you have to meet, but being very precise just helps cut the waffle, and then it makes that investment decision a lot easier. So yes, I'm definitely on board with that one.
Yeah, absolutely. I like that. Cut the waffle. Absolutely. Definitely can make a big difference. Thank you. So I'm going to bring up a quick poll. So bear with me while I do that. So I just launched that quickly. So what we're looking at is, what stage are you at in your digital project? So it might be that you're scoping out a potential project. Could be that you're at that stage where you're writing a business case. You could be at implementation phase, or you're reviewing technology partners. So I'm going to let that run just for another couple of seconds. And probably not surprising, the winner at the minute is writing the business case. So I'm going to end that poll and let me share the results. And yes, so unsurprisingly, most people joining us this morning are at that writing that business case piece. And I think then, closely kind of followed looking at that kind of sort of getting some ideas and looking what to do, scoping the potential project. So thank you. That's really useful to kind of give us an idea of who's joining us this morning. So let me stop sharing those. So now I want to move on to, and I'm going to go through these relatively quickly, kind of thinking of 10 areas of key components of putting that together. As I say, either calling it, strategy document, a business case, whatever it is. So that executive summary is about, it's a clear definition of the ask. What is it and why is it that you're asking for this, this money, this investment? Making sure that has a strategic alignment to what it is your organization is trying to do. What are your long-term goals? What is your next 5-year strategy? Is it around growth? Is it around efficiency? Is it around automation? Whatever it is, making sure that that is completely thought about, because a business case should not be thought in isolation for the organizational strategy. The objectives, being clear and articulate on what the specific objectives of the project are. What is it you're trying to achieve? And as Sarah says, cutting the waffle. So everybody's on the same page about why this project is happening. Thinking about the current state. So this is where, when you're putting your business case forward, you're doing an assessment of, either the existing systems that are in place, the processes, the challenges that you have. So making sure that you're identifying those pain points and the reason of, why you're doing this project and the pain points that are going to be addressed and hopefully fixed. And then looking at the solution, thinking about, from a, because you do have to think about technology at some point, the kind of technologies that you need, the kind of solutions that you need and why, because that then helps the narrative of why you're asking for potentially a very large amount of money. Risks and mitigations, there's risks on every project and there's no point pretending there isn't. But thinking for you as an organization, are there some specific risks that might be? And I know, Sarah, we'll pick up on this a bit later around resourcing. If you don't have lots and lots of staff and you have to share roles and all that kind of thing already, how are you going to embark on that project? And so that could be a very specific risk for you as an organization. The budget, could talk about this one all day long, but it's very much about being realistic about the budget. Very often where projects can go wrong is when budgets are put forward to the board for approval, say, for example, if you're thinking about a CRM project, the cost that gets put forward or the ask is only for the technology partner's implementation costs, and there hasn't been consideration for, do you need support around data migration? Or if you're doing a website project, do you need support or additional cost around content migration or content development? To make sure that you're, or again, also project management or project support, thinking about what are the additional things that need to happen on a project. Are you going to have to backfill people? So thinking about the budget and always putting in a contingency. Doesn't mean a contingency has to be used, but making sure you have it there, because when you get into the world of the art of the possible, sometimes you might decide that you want to slightly change the scope of the project. Being very clear on your timeline and milestones. So don't plan to go live if that is the week of your big annual conference, or that's the week when you do all your membership renewals. Gaining buy-in, very clearly having some good communication plan, good strategies in place around that. And I know that Sarah has been great within the organisation and what she's been doing, so we will expand on that in a bit. And then finally around that evaluation. So being very clear what it is you're trying to achieve, what are the benefits, putting together potentially a benefits tracker, what are the long and short term goals of the project, so that you're constantly reviewing and evaluating that. So then moving on to thinking about kind of taking those 10 points and slightly taking a different approach when doing that. So using more of a storytelling approach, so kind of thinking about creating and crafting that narrative around it. So thinking about that, I'll just bring all of these up in one go. So looking at kind of its use of language, its use of instead of just very long, kind of Word documents, it's about thinking about using language of roadmap to success, the why behind the change, talking about the challenges you face and position of kind of the current reality, using more visuals and infographics so it's a bit more digestible. Thinking about the use of metaphors that again might help kind of people visualize better what it is you're trying to do. And thinking about the risks that is sort of positioning it as kind of navigating the unknown, reframing those risks into challenges and how you're going to overcome them. And I said, budget could talk about that all day long. And then, thinking about that, the timeline, the milestones, thinking about, well, what is your blueprint for success? Talking about your transformation journey, positioning, change management as an exciting way for, empowering staff and influencing them around that. And then evaluation, kind of thinking, do you have a success meter? How does that look like? So it's just taking a slightly different thinking and approach of the language of how you do this. So I'm just going to run another really quick poll, so if you bear with me. Um, so let me go back and pull that one up. So what we're just asking is here are, what are the key challenges that you are facing on your projects? So is it that you're getting agreement on the scope of what the project is? I know that's always a challenge. Or where to start, understanding your requirements, what might that be? Or even just agreement on the priorities, or which is winning at the minute is the staff, time, and availability. So I'm just going to let that run for another second. And then let me end that poll and share the results. So yeah, so definitely kind of understanding the requirements, where to start and their priorities, but staff availability. So yeah, I don't think that one's a surprise. And I definitely know Sarah will have some comments on that later. So I'm going to stop sharing. So if I can just get to move on. So thinking about challenges and mitigations, I do always love a quote. So good old Albert Einstein, a quote to say, "In the middle of difficulty lies opportunity." Projects are hard, um, but there is benefit to be got in doing them. There's always an opportunity. So kind of, I do like this quote when thinking about projects. um, Going through these really quickly, kind of common challenges we see all the time on projects around getting buy-in from people on projects is around user expectation versus reality, what people actually want versus what they need. So you don't have endless wish lists that then make the budget extend and extend and extend. Thinking about the pace of technology change, there's endless different technologies out there, and what is the right one potentially for you? The roles and resourcing. There's never come across an organization that has people sitting around waiting for projects to do and looking, going, please give me some work. Never really happens. So these are kind of just some of the common challenges that we see. Then looking at kind of that side of risk mitigation, really at a high level. So right from the start, identify what the potential risk factors are, putting in place contingency measures, being very, very clear, on what the objectives are, what are your milestones, having a contingency plan, but having that stakeholder engagement plan right from the start, so you've got buy-in, putting together that comms plan, but actually using it and keeping it updated, and being flexible, allowing for the flexibility and the ability to change as you go through a project. Things happen. That's just life. So instead of panicking because possibly the timeline has changed or something has happened, you deal with it, you agree it, you move on in the project. Then also looking around the resource management, things like, what are the skills that you have? And I definitely will be covering this off with Sarah. Who have you got in place? What skills have they got? Are they the right person in that role on the project? So definitely thinking about that. What considerations do you need to take around security? Have you got sensitive data? How is that managed? Where does that live? Taking on board, things like GDPR and all of those fun things. What communication channels are you going to be put in place that you can help manage these risks? And then when you get to the end of the project, having a post-project review. It's really important so that you can learn the lessons so that you don't make the same mistakes when you move into another project. So tools around managing risks, looking at things like putting together your risk register. What tools are out there? Collaboration tools like Teams is very good for sharing information and notifications and documents on projects. what project software might you need? Is it things like Microsoft Project, or is it just Planner? Is it an Excel sheet? It doesn't really matter, but being clear right from the start, how are we going to manage this project and what tools are we going to use? Putting together your issues log, this is about tracking problems that arise on the project, so very different from risk, but having that documented and clearly identified and keeping a log of it can really, really help. And again, a contingency plan. It's always good to have a backup and a contingency plan. So finally enough for me, Sarah, can you tell us a bit more about you and the ISE and all the great things that you do?
I can. I'll keep this a bit brief. So, if you haven't come across us, Institute of Student Employers, we're an organisation of organisations, so it's not individual membership, and our members are predominantly large employers who have a programmatic approach to recruiting graduates and apprentices and other early talent. And we're a small team. I think there's 8 of us. We're about 6.5 FTE, so we're not all full time. I'm certainly not. And our joint chief exec setup is 2 years, I think, old now, which was as a result of a strategy change from the board, which I'll kind of come back to. So it's novel, but if anybody's interested, it's working very well. So yeah, I think I've been at AIC for about 10 years. And prior to that, I've worked with and for lots of different membership organisations. So that is my background.
Fantastic, thank you. And we have some really good questions coming in, which is great. So keep putting them in and we'll make sure we get to Sarah. So thinking about that drivers for change, Sarah. So, what were the drivers for change at ICE? And I suppose, what were the problems that needed solving that you were trying to fix?
So it had been, I think, about 5 or 6 years since we had our previous CRM. So when we put that in place, it was a decision we had to make very quickly because our previous system, the support was being taken away. So we were in a major risk situation. So we made a decision, we made a quick decision. We went with something we knew was functional, but didn't have all the bells and whistles that we probably want. And we did a sort of analysis and we knew that it would sort of pay for itself within a kind of 3-year window. That's where we got to. So it's always in my mind that we were going to need to do this. And in that 3 years, which became, 5, there were a lot of things on the team's wish list that we weren't delivering on. Part of that was around member engagement. We had very little knowledge of what our members were doing. And when they were doing it, and couldn't do any sort of tracking as a result of that, and also because of some of the limitations, I had a team that did have those hidden, well, not so hidden spreadsheets, actually, they were generally quite visible, but there was a lack of trust in the system. And so they definitely felt they needed to keep all of this as backup and would use that as their go-to. And, I'm not placing any blame there at all, but it was inefficient. So there was definitely something about member engagement. There was something about inefficiency within the team. And there was a sort of broader desire. You talked about organizational objectives, and some of that was just to be better. We were ticking along quite nicely, but there was a lot of opportunity out there we just weren't tapping into. And so, the sort of bigger driver was being a more professional, I think, organization, have a more personalized approach with our members, driving, more significant member value out of it, as well as the internal ones.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I agree with all of that. And I do think it's, as you say, and I think it's really good to resonate from somebody of your level of seniority, is to point out that it wasn't about blame. It was about people are doing things to do the best they can, and it's all for the great intentions. But it's not the most efficient way. But that's the reality of life, isn't it? That's kind of the things you have to deal with along these projects. So, I mean, it sounds like it was quite a kind of joined up discussion around all of this. But how did you get agreement with the rest of the management team on on what to change, and more importantly, the budget? Always the big thing about budget. So how did you kind of get that agreement? What sort of process did you go through?
So we started 3 years ago. I actually looked back before I joined this to see when I first put the sort of initial scoping document together, I guess, for our board. So our board are made up of our members. So we've got a board of about 10 to 12, depending on where we are in the cycle, members, and they come from the early talent world, so they're not experts in project management or anything, but they've all put new systems in place. Most of us have at one time or the other, either driving it or being on the recipient of it. And when we're pretty close as a group, by which I mean Stephen and I, Stephen's the other chief exec, we're very open about what the team are doing, what we're doing as execs. We have regular meetings. We don't hide anything. So they knew that there were some ongoing challenges. There were two discussions that came together on this. One was about member value. So we'd created with some documents we'd found out there in the world, sort of member value driver list.
Okay.
And we'd been through with sort of three of our directors whose responsibility was for membership. We'd been through these and we'd mapped them, and we'd looked at where we were doing well, and we looked at where we got some gaps, and we looked at where there was some future opportunities in all of that. And we created a member value proposition and all of that, which is kind of a side project, but it meant that when I did put the business case together, even the very first document I put to the board, I was really able to articulate which of those value drivers I thought this project would meet, ultimately, in the short term. And then the other discussion was about investment. So, obviously in a chief exec role, and definitely because finance and ops are in my remit, we got ourselves to, we weathered a pretty good COVID. We got ourselves to a position where there was an opportunity for some financial investment. But as is often the case, there are competing things that we could do. And, we have some fellows of the organisation. We have some member champions in the organisation. There was plenty of opportunity for us to learn from members what it is that they would want. And so we actually put, I think, 3 or 4 potential investment options together. Okay. And had a conversation. As I said, it wasn't a lengthy document to start with. We had a conversation with the board who were very open. Even before I put that on the table, the board knew that we'd hit our 3-year timeline and knew that at some point this was going to happen. So it didn't come as a shock. Yeah. And I think that's probably one lesson, is whoever is making the investment decisions, in a small team, it's a lot easier because we're so much closer to the front line. But, you mentioned storytelling, we're all feeding in, even if through performance reviews or something, what would make our job easier? What would make that happier? And I think if that can get to those that are making investment decisions, that is helpful. So they sent me away asking for some more information, which was actually relating to the size of the budget, a bit more detail and timelines and things like that. And then we have quarterly meetings. So a quarter later, we had another conversation about it and looked at the other investment opportunities, and then had a very frank discussion about which ways we would want to go.
Yeah. And I really like as well the point of saying it wasn't a surprise because you'd been having conversations with them, because I think that's a big thing. It's very often some people just go to the board with, here's my paper, and it's like, what, we didn't know any of these things, and you're never going to get buy-in if you surprise people, I suppose, is the message, and kind of thinking about that. So because you've done an awful a lot about the different ways you've been doing that, say looking at that member engagement thing, but was there any sort of new approaches that you've had to put in place, thinking about those strategic goals now as part of what this project is? Is there any sort of new strategies or things that you've had to do around that?
We're probably not there yet. We've got a sense of, certainly from an actual process point of view, in terms of what the new system will look like and how that will change how the team focuses and what opportunities are there from that. It's all in the original documentation. It's definitely there in a sort of risk register and other things, but we're probably not there in terms of actually delivering on those processes yet. I think the things in terms of a process, in terms of the project, the critical part of that was talking to the team and working out what they would ideally like. And I know you saw on your slide, want versus need is a very important conversation, absolutely. And I'm going to go off on a tangent, but I'm sure this is fine.
Tangents are completely allowed.
When we came to shortlisted organisations, when we were having those conversations, and when I was taking a very realistic look at the budget versus what is potentially able to deliver, I knew that if we got to 80% of what the team had asked for, or what collectively, I wasn't isolated from that process. For the budget that we put in place, I'd be happy. And I think we've done better than that. In all honesty, I think we've done better than that. But there were other options, which is, spend X amount of money and get to 85% or 90% or 95%. And you've got to have that cost benefit analysis. And I wonder sometimes maybe getting that external support on that conversation just for a reality check, because it's so easy to get sucked into the no, but we must have everything, and wouldn't it be lovely? And but it wouldn't, none of that would have stopped us functioning as an organization, and it wouldn't have stopped us delivering on the value that we've put on the project. So we made the right call.
And I think that it's that analysis, that cost benefit, because you're not going to get everything, because, well, we don't know any organisation, I still haven't met, and I'm sure you haven't, that has just pools of money sitting in the bank waiting to be spent, and there has to be a kind of a bit of a reality check around it, doesn't it? In terms of talking about that selection process, now I'm going off on tangents, because of kind of the size of the organisation and the size of the team, how involved or not did you bring sort of not sort of the board and strategic decision makers, other members of the team into that kind of, while you were doing that selection, or maybe even seeing some of the potential tech partners and their demos and things like that? How involved or not were people in that? And I suppose, did it work, and would you do it differently if you were doing it again?
The short answer is very. The key people that are users of the CRM part of the system were in all of those tech pitches in our shortlisting, in every conversation that we had, and everybody else was certainly kept up to date, and they knew that the specifications, all the key people in the team signed off on the specification, so they could see that what they'd asked for was there, and where it wasn't, that we'd had a conversation about it, and or there's things that are on the list for a phase 2 in this. You might not be able to deliver everything at go live, and taking those decisions of what's critical and what isn't is important, as I'm sure everybody listening knows. But I've kept the team, and actually, would I do things differently? No. Would I have an appreciation for the fact that it does slow the process a little? But I think the value is absolutely worth that, and the partner that we're working with appreciates that as well. I think it's been a surprise to them how much they've seen of all the team, and the process we've gone through to this point, the discovery sessions, everybody was involved, which I think is critical.
It does. It's that buy-in piece. It's that buy-in and communication, because as people get bored of hearing me say, you can't do a project at people. You have to do a project with people. It just doesn't work otherwise. And we've got loads of other great questions coming in. So thinking about, you've kind of touched on this a little bit, but as kind of the development of the project and the thinking about it, what considerations have you put in place thinking about defining success criteria? Because I know that can always be a bit of a contentious one. What is success on a project? So kind of what work have you done around that?
We did quite a bit at the beginning, and some of it is really intangible. I know you said that on your introduction, and it will be tricky, I think, some of it. But I think it's been, as I said, very clear about what the drivers are, and then mapping that to what, even if it's even if it is intangible, what will we look back at and say, we did achieve that, and some of that will involve conversations with the team. I said we're pretty small, so I can have one-to-ones with everybody and go, how much time have you saved? And I've got a sense, I've got numbers written down of what I think that will be. You don't know 100%, but if anybody's spending more time as a result of this, then I've definitely got it wrong. And I'm pretty sure that's not going to be the case. So that's one thing. This is controversial. I have no idea how people listening will feel this, but I'm not a fan of member satisfaction surveys at all. My team know this, because I feel like you're catching people at a certain point in time, that the people that respond and are the ones that are generally more satisfied. You've got to get to the people that are not so engaged. And so I think they're handy kind of marks in the sand occasionally, but I don't put an awful lot of store in them. But we have got, so we've got some good champions, some very good engaged members, which will give me my first kind of, are you happy? Does it work? Are you saving time as a member? Because that's one of the other criteria, success criteria, is the backward and forward saying, I can't find my invoice, or where are my event bookings, or just the operational stuff that our sort of what we call our main contact in the organisation has to deal with. So there'll definitely be some kind of feedback from the membership on that. And then I think there's longer term things. It's about the potential and the possibility and what we can build on from what we've got. So as you said, technology changes all the time. So where do we go from here, and is it scalable, and can we build on things? And that's something that will come somewhere down the line.
Yeah, absolutely. And I always love a controversial point, but I do agree with you when it comes to kind of doing those satisfaction surveys. Also, very often what happens is they get done and they're never used, and then people get rather annoyed by the fact they filled this in and then they're going, and what? So, it's a, as you say, a kind of there's a point in time when they can be useful, but don't do them if you're not going to take them seriously, I suppose, as well. Want to move on to talk about resourcing, and also because that was a challenge that came up in the poll. So, what have you taken to resourcing the project, particularly around your size and scale?
Yes, being very, very honest with ourselves about what our skill sets are. And and I've been involved in one project obviously at ISE, and other projects as well that have been related to CRM and tech. And I'm not an expert, I'm far from it. I'm not a project manager either. I know where we're starting. I know where we want to get up to. I know the key components, but it's not my skill set. And also mapping out to some degree. I mean, this isn't on a piece of paper, but how much time is going to take out of the team, and what, as you said, what's in our calendar year that we really have to avoid. And again, we've worked very closely with our partner on that. They asked for availability calendars for the team, so we just blocked out time when we just said, actually, this isn't going to be a great time to do this, and if we do slip, then we're going to move into this part, and that's not great either. So yeah, being honest about skill sets and honest about capacity is there, and we bought expertise in. So I mean, it won't be surprised because I'm here, but we did use Hart Square, and thank you for your support. So in two areas, one was actually the long listing process. So it would have taken me a long time to scour the market, see who's out there, to work out who I did want to include on the long list and who I didn't, and that was a shortcut that was very much worth it. And actually, the partner that we've ended up with would not have hit my radar at all, and then they are fantastic. So gratitude for that. And then as project manager as well, or project support in there. At a distance, so not somebody that's with us every day or even every week, but just having that external person to just sense check, to ask the questions that we're not asking ourselves. When you're in the middle of it all, it's so difficult to take your head out. And if you're looking at formal roles within this, I'm the project sponsor as well as everything else pretty much underneath it. And while we've got a sort of project board, as I know we refer to them, of a couple of my co-chief exec and a couple of board members, which are also helpful, that definitely is hugely valuable. And then I'm not a data expert either. I naively thought our data was in a pretty good shape, and somebody that we've worked with for many years, but in a very light touch way, is an expert in this. So I'm using her expertise and uncovered a lot of things that we didn't know were there, but it does mean we'll have a very clean set of data going into the new system, and that's worth it. And then I think it's just about monitoring in the interim. I feel for my team at the moment, we've just finished our third round of UAT testing, and they're doing that on top of everything else, and it's really hard. There's no question. So if we have to flex, we have to flex. And I've said all the way along that, health and well-being is more important than getting this done on time. And that goes for our partner organisation too. I did not want them working, all hours, all weekends, everything in order to deliver this. And I asked them to be very honest with us, and they are. So I think it's so easy to put a deadline in place and not really fully understand what might occur along the way. And so you mentioned flexibility. And I think in terms of my conversation with the board, just coming back to that, I gave them an initial timeline when we signed off the business case, but I was very clear that I was doing that from a position of very little knowledge at that point.
Yeah.
And we've updated them regularly. You know, there's been ongoing conversation. We have had to extend it. We found something we weren't expecting. You know, we have had to extend the deadline, but they, you know, they're on board.
Yeah, I mean, I agree with everything you said there, and I think the thing about bringing in expertise, or you know, think data. We have a whole data series. Data is one of those things that often gets kind of forgotten about, the kind of the realization of how much work needs to go into data on projects like these. And so, as you say, you know, where there's support that can help around that. But I also think it's even like, it's sessions like this. What I love about the sector is everybody talks to everybody and kind of going,
Yeah.
you've just done a big project. How did that go? What do I kind of need to think about? And I think that's, for me, is what's really good, which actually comes on to my next question. So
can I just jump in for a second?
yeah,
Sorry, I've just thought of something before we do that. Somebody asked, another chief exec of another organisation asked me just for opinions on certain things, and what would I look out for in the stage before you sign the contract? You know, what are the questions that you want to ask at that point? I know that's not a business case thing, but one of it is around data. And we could have handed our data over entirely to our partner and said, right, you sort it.
Yeah.
And they would have done, you know, and we could have written that in, but they don't know the organisation. And so those anomalies, those strange things, those things that, you know, just have ended up there that even I hadn't spotted, might have just ended up somewhere entirely different because they don't know the organisation the same way that we do. And that is absolutely having somebody with me by my side. And I'm sure if those that are listening, if you're in a bigger organisation, you've got a data person in there, but it definitely took longer than we were expecting it to.
Yeah, and I think it's a really good point. It's as well that point about the knowledge, because you can't hand everything off, because you know, with all the will in the world, consultants, tech partners, support, they're not doing the day job. They haven't been there for 10 years, you know, all of that kind of thing. It's also, you know, without I go equally tangent, but thinking about that when you're in that implementation phase and when you're doing testing, you know, the controversial topic of test scripts and who should write them, and the whole point about, you know, tech partners could, but should they? There's that whole, you know, marking your own homework, and yes, exactly. So you know, it's one of those elements as well, isn't it?
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah. So if you were advising somebody else, anybody on this call this morning, about embarking on a similar type of project, and I know you're not live yet, but you're getting there. Is there anything that you would kind of tell them, kind of a top tips?
Oh, that's a big question, isn't it? I've probably covered quite a few of them. I think, well, I think I've got two. One is more is about that health and well-being thing and keeping energy levels up and making sure you've got the internal buy-in and keeping an eye, if you're leading on this, keeping an eye on the team, and not just the immediate team, but anybody that's involved in it, making sure that there are regular conversations and that people are invited to be very honest about where they are. Because I think that's where things could fall over. And if you don't know, then anything could happen. So that's one thing. And I think being, as I said, being very open with those that are the top sponsors of the project.
Yeah.
So, you know, if things are going off track, and they're not, you know, something in the business case changes, if you know, you've written something and you do, as I say, you do it from a point of not ignorance, but best guess at the time at which you do it. And then you learn things as you go. Even if you've run one of these projects before, you know, things will change. And the sooner that's captured and shared, the better. Oh, and just a very, very minor piece, but in our sort of RAID log, so our risks and the decisions piece, I have captured some of those. I wish I'd captured more. So that's a very micro thing, but you know, if you're the one that's in the weeds, all of this, and you're supposed to be kind of up here in that kind of sponsor mode, I wish I'd kept track of every decision that I'd made. And it feels like admin that you just don't need, but it's so easy. I have got plenty, but it's so nice to be able to go back to it and go, yeah, that's what I said, and that's why I said it. And that's a decision we came to, because so much of our work happens in meetings, not
Yeah.
on paper or on email. It's not all trackable. It's we have a call, we go, yeah, let's do that, let's do that, let's do that. And then I'm trying to capture, but I wish I'd been a bit more detailed on that. So hopefully that helps somebody somewhere down the line.
No, absolutely. And I think, you called it a mind point. I think it's a really major point. I think it's a great point because it is, because sometimes you can look back and go, why did we do that?
Yeah.
And equally from a governance point of view, if anybody ever challenged, why did you make that decision? Go, oh, it was because, and it's documented.
Yeah.
It's so I think that's, yeah, that's it's a really, really good point. So I'm going to move over to some of the questions and just
Yes, please do.
so let me see, we've got some good ones. Where will I go first? So, what strategy was used to avoid scope creep while being agile? Well, I suppose equally the question is, what kind of way are you working, agile or not? So, yeah, how are you avoiding scope creep? I know you haven't gone live yet, so kind of how's that
No,
going?
we haven't. But there have been opportunities along the way, and some of it we've gone with, and some of it we haven't. As I said, at the very beginning, it was about need, not want, and the team knew that. So that's the first thing. We could all add a list of things, and I would encourage them to do it. Keep a list of things if it comes to mind, and you just go, yeah, I think we could do with that, and I think we could do with that. You've got to ask yourself, is it a need or is it a want?
Yeah,
And then the other question is, if it's a want, is it more cost and time efficient to do it now than to do it later?
yeah,
And that involves having a very honest, open discussion with your partner, which we've been lucky to do.
yeah,
So, on a couple of occasions, they've said, yeah, we can do it now, but this is part of a sort of a delay in our timeline, is that we can do it now, but this, it will take us this time, or we can do it now, but it will cost you this. And sometimes you say yes to that because you can see the value, and sometimes you have to say no and keep it on the, maybe phase 2 list. It's in a bigger organization, I know, because I've done it, that's more difficult because you've got so many people coming at you with, ideas and things that could be
yeah,
done. But that would be my advice.
yeah, absolutely. Good advice. Next question. How did you document and share the approvals of the requirements and testing?
Oh my goodness. In terms of requirements, in terms of the specifications, that
Yes.
that, as I say, we all the key people in the organisation signed off on that. Again, I suppose it's true for bigger organisations. Different people are responsible for different parts of the business, and they all looked at their section and signed off on it before I submitted it. And there was a bit of to and fro, obviously, with our partner, but yes, they all saw that. Sorry, what was the second half of the question? That was on the sign off.
And testing. So I suppose
That's a much bigger
maybe, yeah,
piece.
well, yeah, but going through that at the minute. But is there kind of
Oh
anything, I
yeah.
suppose, around testing, anything, expanding on that, that's kind of come up that surprised you a bit, or that you've, had to do some extra work on documentation, or kind of how's that gone?
It's gone really well. I said resource aside, because everybody's got a day job, so fitting that in is really hard. So a couple of things. Our scripts were written by the person that's also doing our data work.
Yeah,
That may not be the same for you, but whoever is doing that definitely needs to be very close to the specifications, because that's what you're testing against, and then I'm pretty close to the organisation, close to the system, because that's what we've done. And every part of the specification document has a test, and that test is there for all of us. So we divided it up, and again played to strengths in the main, but also had some members involved in testing, because that's helpful for the online join process and things that members would be involved in. But there's definitely been occasions where I felt that people were too close to part of it, and so actually we've got them to test a part of the system that they're not that familiar with or wouldn't necessarily use, because that's more likely to throw up errors. And yeah, you're trying to break it at that point. So the less efficient in some ways, the less efficient your tester is, the better, because you're trying to throw things in there that are going to work, rather than just going through the process as you would normally do it. So yeah, it's been, and again, we agreed with our partner organisation very early on, that we would have 3 rounds of this, and we agreed when we were testing, when they were fixing, we pretty much stuck to that. You talked about having the tech to support. We've used Trello because it's very quick. You know, you can
Yeah.
put things up there, you can respond to a card, you can move things around. But anything like that is just proved to be really, really useful. And there's, of course, there's been occasions where I've had to go back to the team and go, I don't quite understand that. Show me that again. But that's normal. You know, you can't take that out.
Yeah, absolutely. Another good question that came in, so saying thanks for this. It would be good to know from Sarah, what were the elements in your business case that you felt most critical to get buy-in from your stakeholders on? So yeah, most
That
critical
was
part.
the bit that I think that not swung it. It's probably a too casual term, but definitely with member drivers. So as I said, we've been through that piece. We'd identified them. We'd prioritised them. I don't think I said that earlier, but we'd looked out of a list of. I think it was about 30 originally. Some weren't relevant to us at all. So we took those out. Some we kind of reworded a bit and just made them a bit more relevant, and we prioritised those within it. So because they knew that, then including those in the business case was really critical, and I think that was what helped the board, over the line in terms of signing off and saying yes, this is something we want to do. But technology is an interesting one, isn't it? Because we all know that we have to replace it, that it doesn't stay forever. And, this isn't a Microsoft Exchange system or anything like that, where, it's, you do have to update things. And everybody in the back of their mind knows that, but it'll be the biggest capital decision we make for, at least 5 years and hopefully longer, because I don't think we'll need to replace it anytime soon. Enhance maybe, but not replace. So that was part of it. And I think, as you said in again one of your slides, putting some data behind it where you can, putting some numbers in terms of initial costs outlines, initial timelines, but as I said, making sure that that's done with a knowledge that this could change, and making sure that contingency, both time and budget, is clear.
Yeah. I really like this question that's just come in. So saying, good luck with your go live, Sarah. I'd be interested to know what plans you have in place for post go live. As we all know, projects don't just end on that date. So yes, post go live plans. You're nearly there. Post go live plans.
Yes. So for this, I'm taking this two different approaches. One for members. So I think we set it like 3 weeks after the go live date. I'm having a big Zoom call, all members can join, walking them through. I actually, this may be helpful for, I don't know, be listening, but once a month I do a make the most of your membership call. Okay. And it's me on there, and I invite any new members or anybody else that's kind of a bit sort of, if anybody can join, and just walk them through the website, just walk them through and go, this is where everything is, this is how you find our reports, this is where the data is, this is how you get access to events. And every time I do it, somebody says to me, I didn't even know you did that. So they're really valuable. I'm going to do a mega one of those kind of 3 weeks after, so give people a chance to log in, to get in there, they've got an access for questions. So I'll do that, and then I'll probably follow that up a good 6 months down the line. We will do a member survey, which is, I won't call it a satisfaction survey, but it will be have you found what you wanted? Is it easier or harder than it used to be? How are your team, doing this? Did you find it more or less engaging? I haven't finalised all the questions for that, but a short survey for members. And for the team, as I say, we're relatively small, so that means we have a weekly team meeting. We've got training videos from our partner of the system, so they're kind of live videos that were recorded, obviously, to kind of go, this is how this bit works. I'm going to do those into shorter bites, so put them in a file. Everybody knows where they can go to say, I haven't done this for a while, I just need to do this, to make them there. I'm going to be scanning our drives to make sure there are no spreadsheets anywhere. But I think that's just about me engaging with the team and again, getting them to be very honest and going, is there anything that you can't do that you wish you could? And then we'll have a review with the partner. We'll have one, immediately afterwards. We'll have one a month down the line, and then we'll, they're obviously going to be with us for a while. So making sure that those things that didn't quite get on the list, or that if there are any that when we get to go live, we both agree, okay, it's not working at this point, but we'll fix it afterwards. It's not critical, and all of those get followed up.
Yeah. and I didn't know you did that member engagement, those drop-in sessions, they're fantastic. I think everybody
Yeah,
should nick that idea. It's
45
really,
minutes once a month, first Tuesday of the
yeah,
month.
it it's great. I think that's such a brilliant idea to get that engagement and actually to get live actual feedback as well, and kind
Yes, it
of,
is. And
yeah,
the other benefit of it is because there's different members on the screen, it helps them build their networks,
mm,
especially if they're new to the organisation or new to early
yeah,
careers. They can see other people on there, and
yeah,
what I hope happens, and I encourage them to do, is go and connect on LinkedIn or swap email
absolutely.
addresses, or then you've got somebody else in your network you can go to that isn't us.
Yeah. Yeah, no, it's absolutely, it's a great idea. It really is. Have kind of answered this question, but I just wanted to cover quickly. So saying, how often do you think you will review kind of that strategy? So I just saying, you're going to have those different touch points, but is there anything sort of overarching, overarching over that terrible English? Kind of what is your kind of your thinking of cadence of reviewing that strategy against the project?
Um, I mean, our business strategy cycle is 3 years. So that's a kind of macro piece on it. We, come back to that in a sort of an annual basis with the board. So, that's an opportunity to check in and make sure that where we are is where we wanted to be, and there'll be I'll put some data together and some anecdotal team stuff to the board to say this is where we've got to. And in terms of the cycle, I think for going through this whole process over again, I mean, I'm hoping it will be a good while, and probably at least another 5 years. But as I say, with technology, you don't know, and we've not
Yeah,
built any AI capability into this. I don't
yeah,
think we're that kind of sector or
yeah,
organization, but it may be that in that time that we need to. And again, I haven't put a timeline on that for the board, but they know that it's something we're on an annual basis just looking,
yeah,
going, does our technology support our needs? And so
yeah.
any more frequent than that, and I think you wouldn't get that big picture stuff. You get too down
Yeah.
into the weeds.
Yeah, absolutely makes sense. And I think, and I'm conscious of time, and I suppose when you were thinking about that choosing your partner, it's about that, as you've already said, it's that long-term relationship. So it's,
Yeah,
you might not do everything at once, but you're knowing that they can still deliver for the next, however
yeah,
number of years. And I suppose was that a big consideration?
huge. I mean, there were a number of reasons why we went with who we did, and one of them was because they talked about having a partner relationship, and it does absolutely feel like that.
Yeah,
And they're not a huge organisation, which of course has negatives to that. Um, but there is not a dissimilar size to us, well, they are a bit bigger than us. But it means we got to meet everybody that we needed to
yeah,
meet. The person that's helping me out with data and scripts said that she'd never been in a pitch where you actually got to meet the developer. And he sat there and answered all our
yeah,
questions, and it wasn't going off and talking to somebody in the background. It felt like we'd got a very personal relationship from
yeah.
day one, from the pitch. So that made a big difference.
Yeah, absolutely. Because it is, it's all of these things are about, it's in life. It's all about people and relationships, and
It is.
things work better if you're all on the same page, and and you're open and honest, and that problems come up, but you deal with them. And if you've got a good relationship,
Yeah.
it makes it much easier. Perfect. So right, I'm going to start wrapping up because again, otherwise I'll be a terrible project manager and I'll overrun on time, so we won't do that. So just really to kind of thinking about sort of summary of all of those many points from the session. So thinking about sort of as key takeaways, making sure you're defining the problem and the opportunity, presenting a kind of clear solution of why you're looking to do it. Very much, and I know, sir, you've pointed on this, conducting a cost benefits analysis, making sure it aligns with your business objectives, use data and evidence for what you're doing and why you're doing it, consider risks and how you're going to mitigate them, having a good plan for how you're going to do things, and be flexible where needed. um Stakeholder buy-in, as I say, it's all about the people. And then very much measuring success, thinking about why it is that you've done all of this. So I just want to finish up by saying thank you for joining us. And Sarah, I could talk to you for hours and hours and hours.
I'm
Some
happy to
please
come back.
come back, definitely. Please come back because there's endless things. And actually, yes, once post go live, then tell us all the world of post go
Well, I
live.
can do. And I know we probably didn't get to everybody's questions, but if anybody wants to reach out on LinkedIn, please do. I'm happy to share.
Fantastic. Thank you so much. Thank you very much, Sarah, and thank you everybody for joining us this morning. We have, and actually, my colleague in the background has reminded me, we a big question about resourcing. We have a webinar coming up on the 13th of March, I believe, all about thinking about resourcing for your project. So join us for that one. So I'm going to wrap up and just say again, thank you very much, Sarah, and hopefully we'll see you again soon. And good luck with Go Live.
Thank you very much. Thanks, everyone. It's lovely to be here.
Thank you.